to Orbit, a podcast series where you stay in orbit with great minds. And today we are on episode 4. Our theme is Innovate, in which we talk about innovation, creativity, and new ventures. I think to talk on that, I couldn't have had a better guest to speak on this topic. He's my professor at Hult, who is a PhD from MIT and do wonders around, and I don't know, still somehow gets time to teach us. So, Professor Michael, welcome to Orbit.
Welcome. Thank you so much for.
How are you?
I'm doing very well. Very excited to be here.
Amazing. So, the topic that I've chosen for you specifically, it's something we all love talking about, especially you being a professor who has always encouraged us to, use AI, get into the tech. When you were teaching machine learning, that was the first time I studied machine learning. So that's why I've had you today to speak on innovation. So before we deep dive into the topic itself, I have a question for you, and that could be like a journal answer, or if there's anything personal that you've done. So what is this one idea, or you would say any invention that nobody believed in, but turned out to be something amazing, like something hands-on, right?
So I'll give two examples. One is one that everyone knows, which is Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that before Airbnb, if you had gone to someone and said, I want to rent out my room to strangers, and they're just going to show up, open the door to my house, and use my house, people would have said that's completely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. It worked after extremely hard work from an extremely good CEO and founder and entrepreneur. Took 18 months, 3 years to get any sort of traction, but it worked, and it's now a $100 billion company. So I think that's one thing that's extremely surprising, something that everyone knows, an application. And then on the technical side, I think the most interesting discovery of the last 10 years that I think also surprises a lot of people is that in AI, next word prediction is enough, which is what a large language model does. And we've known about next word prediction for at least 40 years. We just didn't know that it could do all of this when it got good enough.
Yeah, definitely. So you've seen, like, you've worked with startups, you've worked in large organizations. Starting off, I would say, what do you say? Because a lot of large startups, they have hundreds of existing employees, they have their own products already there. What does it actually mean? Because in business schools, we are taught innovation from scratch, like a blank whiteboard, and then you're starting from scratch. In any of those, big organizations, what do you think? What it actually means that we're innovating something? How would you describe innovation in a large organization?
And so innovation in a large organization is extremely difficult, simply because the incentives are just not there. And as many people have mentioned, innovation in a large organization often means iteration. You're going from version 3.0 to 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. And as I said, it's largely because the incentives are not there. So a person who joins a large company can choose one of two career paths. One is a standard career path, where if they're a great performer, every 2 to 3 years they will get promoted for many, many years, just doing the work, so to speak, and not taking any risks with their career. On the other hand, innovation hardly ever works. Right? Innovation works less than 10% of the time. And so what is the incentive for the person who is a high performer in an organization to pursue innovation when there's a 90% chance they're going to fail? And so it's incredibly difficult to do, and that's why you see the leapfrogging in the startup world.
Yeah, because that's a thing we've seen repetitive innovation. It works in the loop because you've invented something. Now, having an example of iPhone, I feel like it just changed the way we communicate. It was pretty much similar before. It just made it more, I would say, innovative. And why I call it, because it just literally changed the way we used to communicate. It became slightly expensive as the time went on, but now when I think about it, I think it's an amazing innovation. So why do you feel we keep on getting into this loop? Because we make better versions of what we had already invented before. And why do you think that's okay? Like, do you get me? Like, there's something already invented, we just find better versions, and we think that's innovation, which I don't think it is, like from the scratch. And why do you think that's okay?
I just think that that's the incentive system. So, in the iPhone, we're now on, iPhone 18 or 19 or something like that. I'm getting ready to buy my new iPhone in September. As you say, it's very expensive.
Yes.
I think it's going to cost $3,000 because I'm going to get the flip phone one, which is the new one that's coming out.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, it's not much different than the iPhone that existed in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
Right? So there was one big innovation and then a whole bunch of iteration. And you ask yourself the question, right? If you're on the iPhone team and you've been iterating for 20 years now almost, and you have a simple iteration that it's going to make you billions and billions of dollars, or you could try to innovate and have a 90% plus chance of failure, which would you choose? Well, you would choose the guaranteed path to billions of dollars.
Yes.
And this happens even in very large companies where they create internal incubators full of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What happens again and again is that the entrepreneurs do something, but then it's actually killed by the large company because they're extremely risk averse, right? The incentives are just not there. When you have nothing, it makes sense to take risks. But when you have billions of dollars coming in through the door, it makes sense to take no risk and simply preserve what you have.
Right. Speaking of which, what do you think are the constraints that drive creativity? Because you've seen businesses that start from nothing, and then you have seen companies with everything. What role does constraint play when they're driving creativity, when we talk about innovation?
So I think constraints are extremely important. I think that there's a big mistake that people make, that being free of constraints is actually the best thing. You're actually much better off. Yeah. This has been proven again and again in academia and in practice to be constrained. So a simple example of that everyone can apply in their own life is a time constraint.
Yeah.
Right? So I am going to launch something by the end of this month. By the end of this month, you have to have a product, you have to have a website, you have to have a PDF, you have to have whatever. And you force yourself to execute. Because if you don't, it could take years. I actually have a friend who has spent over 5 years on this great invention, and he has nothing because he's free of constraints.
Yeah.
And so because he's free of constraints, there is no movement. And as Steve Jobs said, great artists ship. They don't iterate forever.
Yes, definitely. And speaking of the technology and AI, at Hult, or not only at Hult, I mean, we have different business schools. Even we can speak about MIT. You've been a professor who has actually taught us how to use AI, I would say. I'm really encouraged about that because we have this thing every time we're using AI. That's, I think, a mindset that we're compromising our learning. We're not learning much. Ever since it was invented back in 2022, when people started using ChatGPT, I had graduated already from my undergrad, so I didn't really get a chance to do my assignments with ChatGPT. But that 3 years I spent in corporate, even when we were used to, use ChatGPT for any of those culture initiatives maybe, or building a learning calendar, it used to be something like, oh, you're compromising your learning because you're not thinking out of yourself. And when I came here, it literally was a complete 180-degree shift because people here encourage using AI. So what do you think, what role does in general, business schools are playing when they encourage students to use tech and AI?
So the key distinction to make is to use AI as an input into your thinking as opposed to a replacement for your thinking.
Definitely.
And I understand that there's a huge temptation when you are a student and you have 2 or 3 big assignments due and you don't have time and you want to sleep, to just copy and paste the assignment into AI and produce an answer.
Mm-hmm.
What you are doing there is that you are cheating yourself out of the learning.
Yes.
My opinion is, which is not an opinion that is shared by many students, it is much better for your future success to go ahead and get the C doing your own work than to get the B by submitting work that AI has done.
Right.
Because eventually it will actually catch up to you
Yes.
in the decisions that you make in your own life. But I understand that at the last minute, when there's an enormous amount of pressure to hit the submit button, that it's very easy just to take the AI answer and put it in.
Right. So we'll start with the rapid fire round. That's my favorite part about the podcast, and I'll just give you some questions. We'll do just one word answers, no thinking. So the first question: innovate or optimize?
Optimize.
Amazing. Last thing that genuinely surprised you?
The next word is enough.
Oh, wow. Best innovation of the decade?
Again, next word prediction is enough.
Okay. Risk taker or calculated better?
Calculated better.
I see. Okay, last one. What's one thing students should be building right now that's nobody building yet?
They should be building their own replacements.
Oh, I love that. That's so deep. And, before we wrap up the episode, there's one key takeaway that every Orbit episode has. I mean, it can be one-liner, any summary of something that we've done. So, from your personal experience and from what we've discussed so far about the technology and AI and innovation, that's every new thing is inventing every day. Every day I get up, I find some new invention. One key takeaway that would be the key takeaway for this episode
is make time in your own life for innovation. It's very easy once you start working to get into this habit of 9 to 5 work, go home, watch TV, sleep, and then work, and on the weekend do household chores. You have to make time for innovation.
Definitely, because it's really important to look at any of the work that you're doing and you're stuck, and then think about it and say, what if we started backward? And that would be like a complete different thing. So thank you, Michael, for being today, for taking out time for this episode. And with that, we are wrapping up our episode 4, which was on innovation, disruption, creativity, and new ventures. Michael gave us some really great insights. So thank you to all my listeners, and I'll see you guys in another episode. Till then, stay at Orbit with Grey Minds. Thank you.